March 12, 1968, Phuoc, Tui Province. Lieutenant James McCallister stepped off the Huey helicopter into air so thick it felt like breathing through wet cotton. The heat hit him first, 100 degrees, maybe more. Then the humidity wrapped around him like a second skin. Sweat poured down his back before he even reached the briefing tent at Nui Dat base. He was 28 years old, a veteran of SEAL Team 1, and he had killed more Viet Cong in the Rung Sat Special Zone than he cared to count. But nothing in his experience prepared him for what he was about to hear. Inside the tent, 3 Australian SAS sergeants waited. The lead man was Bob Kearney. They called him Killer. He had the calm eyes of someone who had seen too much death to be impressed by it anymore. Kearney spread a map across the table and tapped a spot 15 kilometers north. Dense jungle, triple canopy rainforest where the trees grew so thick that sunlight never touched the ground. This was 274th VC Regiment territory. Intelligence said at least 2,000 enemy fighters were using it as a rest area and supply hub. Kearney explained the mission in a voice barely above a whisper. 5 men would patrol deep into that jungle for 14 days. They would move 800 meters per day, maybe less. They would eat 1 meal per day, cold food only, no cooking fires. And here was the part that made McCallister's jaw clench. Their primary mission was to watch, not fight. Avoid contact at almost any cost. McCallister stared at him. "You're gonna get us fucking killed." Kearney just smiled. "We're still here, mate." Everything about it felt wrong. McCallister was trained to close with the enemy and destroy him. SEALs ran 6 to 8 hour patrols. They moved fast. They hit hard. They had gunships on call and extraction helicopters waiting. Fire superiority through overwhelming violence. That was the SEAL way. Find them and kill them. Body count was how you measured success. But these Australians operated differently. 14 days of rations weighed down their packs. They would be ghosts in the jungle, moving so slowly that grass had time to spring back up behind them. 10-meter spacing between men. 2-minute halts every 50 meters to listen. 30-minute listening stops every hour. McCallister watched Kearney wrap his rifle in fabric strips to prevent any metal from scraping. He watched another trooper tape down his dog tags so they would not clink. The jungle outside buzzed with cicadas. Wait a while, vines covered everything, their thorns sharp enough to tear through canvas and skin. Visibility dropped to 10 or 15 meters in that green hell. The enemy knew every trail, every water source, every hiding spot. And the Australians wanted to walk slowly through the middle of it all, eating 1 meal a day, relying on silence instead of firepower. McCallister looked at the map again. 2,000 enemy fighters out there, 5 men going in, moving at a crawl, no backup. This was madness. But orders were orders. Tomorrow morning, they would insert 5 kilometers from the target area and begin their slow walk into hell. The helicopter touched down 5 kilometers from the target area. McCallister expected to move straight toward the enemy. Instead, Kearney led them in a wide circle, walking away from their objective for 2 hours before turning north. A false trail. If the enemy tracked the helicopter insertion point, they would find nothing. The first day nearly broke McCallister. They moved 800 meters in 12 hours. Every 50 meters, the patrol stopped for 2 minutes of complete stillness. Every hour, they halted for 30 minutes just to listen. The jungle pressed in from all sides. Vines caught at their uniforms. Thorns drew blood. The air was so humid that breathing felt like drowning. And they moved so slowly that McCallister wanted to scream. At noon, Kearney signaled a halt. He pulled out a single packet of dehydrated rice, mixed it with water from his canteen, and ate it cold. 1 meal. That was it for the day. McCallister watched the Australians chew slowly, their faces showing nothing. His own stomach growled. He had packed extra rations, but Kearney had made him leave half behind. Weight was the enemy on a 14-day patrol. The noise discipline was maddening. On the second day, McCallister's bootlace made a small tick sound against his canvas pack. Kearney stopped the entire patrol with a raised fist. They stood frozen for 5 minutes while he listened. Then he moved back to McCallister and pointed at the lace. His eyes said everything. One sound could kill them all. By day 4, McCallister understood the spacing. 10 meters between each man meant that if the point man walked into an ambush, the others had room to maneuver. It meant that one burst of enemy fire could not kill the whole team. It meant that in the thick jungle, they were nearly invisible even to each other. On day 5, everything changed. The point man raised his fist. The patrol froze. Kearney moved forward like smoke, making no sound at all. He knelt beside a trail and pointed. Fresh footprints in the mud. 15 to 20 men had passed within the last 4 hours, moving south. McCallister's training kicked in immediately. Set an ambush. Call the reaction force. Engage the enemy. Kill them. But Kearney pulled out a camera instead. He photographed the tracks from 3 angles. He measured the depth of the prints with his fingers. He studied broken twigs and bent grass. Then he signaled the patrol to withdraw. They backed away from the trail, moving even slower than before, erasing their own signs as they went. 3 days later, the radio crackled with news. B-52 bombers had hit a target 6 kilometers south based on their intelligence report. A Viet Cong battalion headquarters had been destroyed, an estimated 180 enemy killed. 0 friendly casualties. McCallister stared at Kearney across the small hide site they had dug. The Australian was mixing powdered coffee with cold water, his face as calm as if he were sitting in a cafe back home. That was when McCallister finally understood. These men were not avoiding contact because they were afraid. They were hunting. Every step, every observation, every piece of information was a weapon more powerful than bullets. The patience that felt wrong, that went against every instinct McCallister had learned, was actually the most lethal tactic of all. On day 9, a Viet Cong patrol passed 15 meters from their position. 8 men with AK-47 rifles, talking quietly, completely unaware. McCallister lay flat against the jungle floor. Mosquitoes fed on his face and neck. He could not move to brush them away. He could not scratch. He could barely breathe. For 45 minutes, he experienced what prey felt like. The Viet Cong walked so close he could smell the fish sauce on their breath. When they finally passed, Kearney looked back at McCallister. No words needed. They were not hiding from the enemy. They were letting the enemy walk past while they gathered the intelligence that would kill them later. They were not soldiers playing defense. They were predators, choosing the perfect moment to strike. Day 12 arrived with heavy morning mist. The patrol had been moving toward a suspected supply cache for 6 hours, creeping through jungles so thick that visibility dropped to 5 meters. Kearney had spotted signs everywhere. Old fire pits, discarded ration tins, trails worn smooth by many feet. They were close to something big. Intelligence suggested at least 60 Viet Cong were using this area as a rear staging point for the 274th Regiment. At 6:15 in the morning, the Australian scout moved forward to find an observation post. His boot caught a small stone. The sound was tiny, just a click of rock against rock, but in the morning stillness, it carried like a gunshot. 30 meters ahead, a Viet Cong sentry turned. His AK-47 came up fast. Kearney made the call. Contact front. Immediate action. The jungle exploded with gunfire. Kearney's L1A1 rifle cracked 3 times in 4 seconds. 3 Viet Cong dropped before they could return fire. Then the whole jungle came alive. The distinctive sharp crack of AK-47s erupted from multiple positions. The heavier thump of an RPD machine gun joined in. Bullets snapped through the air with that terrible supersonic crack that meant they were passing inches away. Leaves shredded and fell like green rain. The smell of cordite mixed with the rot of the jungle floor. McCallister watched Kearney work. No panic, no shouting, just hand signals and precise rifle fire. The SAS contact drill was nothing like American doctrine. Instead of assaulting through the ambush, they fought backward. 2 men laid down covering fire while 3 moved back 50 meters. Then the roles reversed. Leapfrog movements. Measured shots instead of emptying entire magazines. McCallister adapted fast. He covered Kearney's withdrawal with his Stoner 63, firing controlled 5 and 6 round bursts. The weapon bucked against his shoulder. Hot brass flew past his face. His ears rang from the noise. By 6:25, the Viet Cong force had grown to 30 or 40 fighters. They pursued through the jungle, firing wildly, crashing through undergrowth. But Kearney had planned for this. The withdrawal route led through dense wait-a-while vine thickets. The thorns were so thick that men had to push through slowly, getting torn apart. It channeled the pursuers into a narrow corridor. Kearney stopped at a pre-selected position and knelt beside a tree. McCallister saw the wires then. It was an M18 Claymore mine, planted days earlier during their approach. Kearney waited until the Viet Cong were perfectly positioned. Then he squeezed the clacker. The explosion was deafening. 700 steel balls ripped through the jungle at waist height. The screaming started immediately. The Viet Cong broke contact. At 6:40, Kearney made the first radio call of the entire patrol. He said, "This is Alpha 2. Emergency extraction required." His voice was calm, like he was ordering lunch. Royal Australian Air Force Huey helicopters were 15 minutes out. The patrol reached the primary extraction point at 7:05, a small clearing they had identified during mission planning. Behind them, 200 meters back, the Viet Cong re-established contact. Bullets snapped overhead. McCallister could hear them shouting to each other, organizing for a final assault. At 7:13, the first Huey appeared. The door gunners opened up immediately. The long, sustained bursts of M60 machine guns echoed across the jungle. Red tracers cut through the canopy like laser beams. Bark exploded from trees. The suppressive fire was beautiful and terrible. At 7:15, all 5 men climbed aboard. The Huey lifted, banking hard. McCallister looked down at the jungle canopy disappearing below. Not a single friendly casualty. They had walked into hell, been compromised, fought their way out, and everyone was going home. Kearney sat across from him, already cleaning his rifle. His hands were steady. His face showed nothing. McCallister finally understood why the Navy SEALs had feared operating with these men. It was not hatred. It was something deeper. It was the fear of realizing that everything you thought you knew about being a warrior might be wrong. Within 72 hours, the intelligence package McCallister and the SAS team delivered changed everything. The photographs, enemy strength estimates, cache locations, and trail networks went straight to Australian Task Force Command. 3 days after extraction, the Australian 1st Battalion moved in with full force. They captured 12 tons of rice, over 40 weapons, and killed 3 Viet Cong in the follow-up contact. The supply route that had fed the 274th Regiment for months was shut down for the next 3 months. McCallister requested an extended attachment to the SAS. Over the next 4 months, he completed 3 more patrols. Each one reinforced the same brutal lesson. Patience was more deadly than aggression. Silence killed more effectively than noise. Information was the real weapon, not the rifle. But the doctrine did not spread the way it should have. MACVSOG, the Studies and Observations Group, adopted similar long-range reconnaissance tactics. Some SEAL platoons started integrating low-profile patrol techniques, but conventional SEAL command resisted the change. The metrics still favored body count over intelligence gathering. Direct action missions were easier to measure, easier to report, easier to celebrate. The slow, patient, invisible approach did not fit neatly into after-action reports. The numbers told a story that few wanted to hear. From 1966 to 1971, the Australian SAS deployment in Vietnam resulted in 492 confirmed enemy killed and 106 captured. Only one Australian SAS trooper was killed by enemy action during that entire period. Sergeant William Hacking died in February 1967. The kill ratio was roughly 500 to 1. The SEALs maintained excellent ratios too, averaging 20 to 1. But their casualty rates ran higher because of their aggressive, direct action doctrine. The philosophical divide never closed. American military culture valued visible results and immediate kinetic effects. The idea of crawling through the jungle for 2 weeks, eating 1 meal a day, avoiding contact, gathering information instead of taking scalps, felt passive. It felt wrong. It went against everything warriors were taught about dominating through violence. McCallister understood both sides. Years later, he said that they were the best soldiers he ever worked with, but he could not do it their way full-time. The patience required went against everything we were taught about being warriors. After the war, former Viet Cong commander Nguyen Van Minh of the 274th Regiment spoke about the Australians. He said they were different. He said Viet Cong fighters could ambush Americans and could evade them, but the Australians would find Viet Cong camps, watch them for days, then disappear. When Viet Cong pursued, they found nothing, and then the bombs would come. The tactical brilliance proved that counterinsurgency could be won through patience, intelligence gathering, and precision. But no amount of tactical excellence could overcome the flawed strategic objectives of the war itself. The Viet Cong were never defeated in Phuoc Tuy province. They were only contained, temporarily disrupted. By 1972, Australian forces withdrew. By 1975, North Vietnamese tanks rolled through Saigon. The lessons did survive, though. In Iraq and Afghanistan, United States Special Operations Forces adopted many special air service techniques: low visibility operations, extended patrols, indigenous partnerships, the find, fix, and finish doctrine that prioritized intelligence over body count. The tactics that felt so wrong in 1968 became standard procedure 40 years later. Today, the Phuoc Tuy jungle has reclaimed the trails. Farmers find rusted shell casings while planting rubber trees. The old Australian base at Nui Dat is overgrown and barely recognizable. McCallister is 82 now. He keeps a photograph from that 1968 patrol. 5 men, gaunt from hunger, covered in jungle rot, eyes hollow from exhaustion. On the back, Kearney had written 2 words: the ghosts. McCallister says they taught him that there is a difference between being a warrior and being a hunter. Warriors seek glory. Hunters seek results. In that jungle, we needed hunters. The difference saved lives. It just did not save the war. But in the end, the ghosts who walked silently through that green hell taught a lesson that echoes through every modern conflict. Sometimes the deadliest warriors are the ones the enemy never sees until it is too late.